The views and topics expressed by tonight's guest do not necessarily reflect the beliefs and or opinions of Paranormal Road or our sponsors. We present tonight's topic for your consideration and review. Ultimately, each of us must decide for ourselves what we hold to be true. Exploring unknown regions of our reality.
And she looks out and sees these lights in the sky and these different patterns drifting like they were going to land.
Examining the depths of human perception.
I remember when I was awake and I realized I was awake, I started to sort of scan the room and I realized that something was wrong.
Pursuing the elusive and unseen.
Electronics started acting up, ceased to work, overheated.
You have just entered a road of wondrous mystery.
And so when we get around this bend in the road and this group of trees, we look up in the sky and there's this craft, and it is huge.
A place where sometimes our darkest terrors dwell.
I've never seen anything like this, and instantly I could feel the fear.
You've just turned on to the Paranormal Road.
You've just turned on the Paranormal Road. I'm Dave Hensley, your host.
And I'm Randy Kessler, your co-host.
And this is our final episode of Season 3. Probably many people are out there saying, yay! But it has been a really, exciting and a very interesting season this year.
We got to meet and talk to a lot of cool people this year.
Yeah, that's what I love about Paranormal Road. Just the amount of interesting guests we have, and boy, do we have an interesting guest for you tonight. We have Ronald Kinsella, and if that name sounds familiar, it should. He is the brother of Philip Kinsella from our last show. And as you remember, Philip and his brother had quite a few, experiences, but you have to hear his story as well, from a floating thing that they saw with their grandmother that I think actually started in their curiosity. It goes way back, but I'm just rambling here, and I'm not going to take away from his story because I got to interview him and Randy did not.
Of course. I missed out again, and I really wanted to because of listening to his brother's story. I thought, you know what, I want to hear the other side of the story. But being that it was another interview from England.
Across the pond, and the schedules and the timing.
Yeah, I wasn't able to be here again, and that really pisses me off. But
but you do get to listen to my interview with him.
And it was amazing.
And so before we get on with that show or with our featured guest tonight, I do want to, we want to call out a special thanks to so many that have contributed to the Paranormal Road. Our voiceovers, for example, you may recognize one of them, and that's Adam Ballinger of the Graveyard Tales podcast. Adam was kind enough to do quite a few voiceovers for us. The second voiceover that we have is Joe Woolen of WOBL, and he is our main featured voiceover in the beginning of our podcast. He does a great job.
We also want to talk a little bit about some of our other people that have contributed so much, one being Amy Boo.
Yes, the Boo Report. I love it when Amy's on. And unfortunately, with this year and COVID and so much going on, it was very difficult to have more Boo Reports. So hopefully in Season 4, we'll be able to make up some ground. We just didn't have as many as we would like to. But we would like to call out for Amy. She has her own channel now on YouTube called Wild Boo Yonder. Make sure you check that out. We'd also like to thank Nance Warren of Buckeye Bigfoot for narrating our listener stories. She does an incredible job, and It's just last week we had a listener story, and again, she just does an amazing job with her narration. And of course, the one and only William Haddox for providing us with the Haddox reports and keeping us up to date and ever thinking about UFOs.
And now, professional UFO investigator on special assignment with Paranormal Road, it's William Haddox with the Haddox Report.
This is William Haddox with the Haddox Report, and I've got something interesting to bring to you this week. I'm sure a lot of you probably saw videos, pictures that have been floating around of a pyramid craft that was spotted by some of our fighter jet pilots. Videos like this have surfaced in the past in one fashion or another, but what makes this one extremely interesting to me, as well as a few others, is the Pentagon coming out fairly quick and saying, yes, we're aware of it, and yes, it is real, and no, it is not ours. A question that I want to bring to everybody is, why? For years, decades, the government has denied anything to do with UFOs. They call you a kook, crazy, whatever. Say that there's no such thing. It's swamp gas or balloons or lights or a drone or whatever. And now all of a sudden they're admitting to everything quite rapidly. One train of thought that I've had is, could they be planning some sort of a faked invasion as others have suggested? Two, could it be there's just so much coming in that they can't deny it anymore? It's hard to say, but one thing that I do know is governments never freely tell you anything. They're either forced to, or they find a way to twist it to fit whatever narrative and agenda that they have currently. So it'll be very interesting to watch in the coming days as we approach June the 1st, as I mentioned before. That is supposed to be the date of disclosure. That was included in one of the coronavirus relief bills. And it's just very odd to me that they're now wanting to release everything with not a whole lot of public pushback. In the past, the public has been really adamant and tried their best to get disclosure, and it never happens. Now everybody's focused on other things, and they're willing to just put it all out there. I'm still skeptical. I will have to wait and see what comes out and how it is all released. This will be the final Haddox report for the season. However, June the 1st, as I mentioned, is the date of disclosure. At least it's supposed to be. Depending on how the information is released and what all comes from it, there may be a special edition of Paranormal Road and a longer full episode Haddox report if there's enough information that comes out into a format that makes it presentable. I know I've mentioned things like this quite often over the years, so when stuff does finally come out, I like to let everybody know, what happened and what my opinion is. Also, before I go any further, I would like to thank somebody that left a really nice comment a couple of weeks back, and it was username Old Guy. I really appreciate it. That's one thing about doing programs like this. You don't always get a lot of feedback, so you kind of wonder sometimes how the audience is perceiving your show or your segment. But I do appreciate all the kind words, and I also want to thank my producers at Paranormal Road for giving me this opportunity to do the Haddox report. I never realized that it would turn into what it has. I really do, like I said, appreciate it. I was asked to do one episode, and it was received well enough that they brought me on, and It's been really enjoyable, and we will definitely continue. If you want to check out the reporting center, whether you've had a sighting in the past that you would like to report for the archives, something more recent you would like me to investigate, or just to check out what others have seen and the evidence that they have presented to me, feel free to go to Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. And at the bottom of the homepage, there will be two links. One will take you to the Facebook page under the same name, Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center. The other will take you to my YouTube channel. That is where I upload all of the Haddox reports. So if there's anything you might have missed in the past and you want to check it out, it's all there. But again, I'd like to thank everybody for all the kind words and all the support over the past year. And I look forward to what the next year will bring in the next season of Paranormal Road. It's hard to say what our future has in store for us, but I can guarantee you one thing. It will not be boring by any means. So as always, I want everybody to stay safe, have a nice, enjoyable summer, and as always, keep looking up.
And thanks so much, William, for that interesting story tonight. And as always, we really do appreciate everything you do and what you bring to the table here at Paranormal Road with your stories and your information about UFO encounters. You really are appreciated by us and our listeners. And without further ado, let's bring in our interview with Dave and Ronald Kinsella. Ronald is also the author of his newest book, which is called Digital Demon.
As we talked about earlier, we have Ronald Kinsella as one of our featured guests for this very last show of the season. And we're really excited, and it kind of parallels with what you just heard on the Haddox report, the UFO subject. Ronald, welcome to the Paranormal Road.
Thank you, David, and it's a pleasure to be on here, as always.
Yes, it's we're really excited to talk to you about. Now, we had last show, we had your brother Philip on, and we received a tremendous amount of positive feedback. So we're double excited to have you on, kind of to pick up on the saga between you and your brother. Without, and I'll try listeners to not overlap questioning and information, but can you tell us how this all started as far as when this began for you, or did this whole journey into the alien UFO experience that your books are written about, did this start instantaneously with the both of you, or is it something that was individual experiences?
They were individual experiences. The interest occurred from a consequent meeting with them, as we call them, back in 1982. I was 13 years old. Basically, I was thrust down the rabbit hole, forced down it. And, it's funny, David, it came much later, the writing, because as a child of 13, I had no interest in them. You couldn't talk about it to anyone. It was paranoia. Because you were considered an utter crackpot or delusional or a fantasist.
Right.
So I sensibly kept quiet about the entire thing until later on. I mean, when these things happen to you, you're like Sherlock Holmes. It's not logical. You become Sherlock Holmes. There must be a logic behind being thrust or forced down the rabbit hole. But even when you come to that assumption, it doesn't make any logic at all. There's no logic to it. So it was only in my 40s, I'm in my 50s now, but it was in my 40s that I started to open up about this, because mercifully, other people were doing the same thing. It was becoming more widely acceptable, this UFO paradox and this alien presence. We refer to them as aliens, whatever they are, certainly supernatural. So the curiosity didn't kill the cat. So I broadened my horizons, but in a hopefully a sensible approach, looking at it from every aspect. I mean, yes, we have sensationalists, we have people who fabricate things. We're going to get that with anything.
Right.
But I wanted to look at it very seriously. And this is what propelled me into researching the alien enigma, by documenting it. And you will have those who will say to you that, okay, you're in it for the money. You're just doing this for the money. I am not. Researchers, and I'm not a researcher. I would consider myself to be a casual researcher. Or experiences get very little money, and if anything, you get more ridicule than you do respect.
Right.
But fortunately, in this field, I have received a degree of respect, and I'm very honoured about that, because I'm very honoured to be connected with some members of MUFON, which is an incredible honour, and Kathleen Marden as well, the lovely Kathleen Marden, the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, and other people, Peter Robbins, many others, respected researchers who I look up to, who have helped me and supported me through this. So it's been quite wonderful for me on a personal level. But as to my interest in it, it's spurred from the thing we saw, Philip and I being twins, we saw with our grandmother, first of all, the orb, the sphere. And then secondly, consequently, the abduction, we'll call it abduction because it's commonly referred to as that, by these things that took me only once in 1982, and I saw them, albeit they were very strange.
Now, I have to ask you, the cover of your book is terrifying. Is that
Thank you.
Representation of what you saw?
No, that's my artwork. That's all my own artwork. I use digital artwork now. That's to emphasize a demonic aspect to them. I'm not saying and the wonderful thing is, and which I think hopefully your listeners will be comfortable with, I don't taint them all with the same brush. I don't know what they are. I mean, nobody can tell you that. Right. I mean, you have some people who say, well, they're from Alpha Centauri or they're from the Zeta Reticuli. They might well be, but we can't prove it. But that is to demonstrate or illustrate one aspect of what they might possibly be. So the aliens I saw, or I will refer to them as aliens as they're commonly referred to by people, they're comfortable with that, were not like that. They were different. They weren't the Greys either, which I do believe wholeheartedly in the Greys. Absolutely. They're a force. Yes, they're real. They're a reality. But if that's what they are truly, I'm not too sure. It could be a force that is able to change faces or work with our psyche, to project themselves like that. We don't know, but it's good to speculate. I love speculation. I love it.
Yeah, and that's where I really enjoyed talking with your brother, because I too as well, because we do not know. But one of the things that your brother and I agreed upon is that all these things that are like, I don't know how, but they seem to be related as far as cryptids. You have, the Bigfoot, you have the Dog Man, you have all kinds of paranormal, bizarre Mothman. There seems to be a connection with this. Hauntings as well. Poltergeist activity is known to be around abductees or people that have been having, these type of experiences. And it makes me wonder, again, as Philip and I kind of talked about, that could it be the energy that is creating fissures? So therefore, it may not be connected. The Dogman may have nothing to do with these aliens. However, because a fissure was opened or somehow an energy, it may allow these other realities to manifest. Do you kind of believe in that as well?
Yes, it's a distinct possibility. Interdimensional, absolutely. I often wondered when I researched the UFO subject after this, much later, as I said, they seem to change faces as swiftly as they change ships. And I've mentioned this in the Digital Demon. That you have, what confused me was the fact that you had that they were fairies, which I believe are real. They could manifest into these things, trolls. You know, you have werewolves, as you mentioned yourself, the Mothman, and then you have the Nordics, the golden-haired, blue-eyed aliens, the beautiful ones. Then you have the monstrous greys. It seems to be what's in vogue, or not totally. I would say that loosely. But they're masters, they're like magicians, they're masters of deception. Are the werewolves a byproduct of them, an essence of them? Are they actually them projecting themselves of them? Are we being tested through this, you know, this phenomena, you know, and what do they want? You know, I'll give an example. When people label what they are and they are tunnel visioned, they won't have anything other than saying that they are from the future. Well, as I said, they might well be, but you know, when they suggest that these are actually being mistaken for things from the future, well, I corrected them on a point here, because they were stating that they might well be collecting DNA from us, you know, to preserve our race through some cosmic catastrophe, or perhaps to help enable them to improve themselves in the future. That didn't make sense to me, because logically, like I always use Sherlock Holmes, my grandfather got me into Sherlock Holmes, and although his fiction is ironically, his methods of deduction were amazing. So I'd use Sherlock Holmes' methods of deduction in deducing that if they were from the future, yes, they might well be. They could be sightseers, as Brandon Thomas stated to me from Expanding Reality. I'm comfortable with that. They could come back to see what we're like. We would, you know. But if they were to collect DNA from us, that is an absolute no, because respectfully put, David, we are medically soiled at the moment. We have cancer, we have COVID, we have many disgraceful and terrible ailments which we would like to be cured. So if for them to pick this time to collect genetic material would be a no-go for me, because it just wouldn't wash with me. They would pick a time they would pick a point in time where they knew we were medically clean, where our medical knowledge know-how would be supreme, and we would be more or less clean. So that's what that's the time they'd go to extract DNA or salvage what they can from the genome or whatever it is, you know. So we're in that respect, they're stating that they are brilliant engineers, but rather stupid medically. And I don't believe it. I don't believe that at all. You know, if they're from the future, they would be very advanced. Exactly. So we can rule out any kind of Noah's Ark DNA analogy of that. You know, we can rule that out, but certainly time travelers. You see, this is what we get with people, but some of them are so fixed to saying they're from the future, you know, and when you have them saying that they are from Alpha Centauri or they're from the Draconian star system, that's where we have to draw lines and say, no, we don't know. You know?
Right. You know, it's doing Paranormal Road, which I absolutely love. We have met some incredible people such as yourself and your brother, but we also have a paranormal research team, and we'd give lectures, and it would frustrate me when we would put some evidence out there and then someone on another team or whatever would contradict and say, no, it is this, this, and this. And again, it's like you're saying, we don't know. Any explanation is plausible at this point because the subject matter is so large. It's hard to wrap your head around. I think all we can do is speculate. I do think that when you get enough repeated pattern of something, you could start forming a theory based upon, you know, okay, this happens every single time. But it doesn't necessarily seem to be the case if I'm correct on these alien encounters. There's oddities with all of them. That it's not like it is systematically identical on all these. There are certain things that are the same, but no two experiences are alike, if I'm correct.
That's right, because mine was completely different from Philip's. And ironically, I don't know if this is any relevance to it, but they happened 7 years apart, and we were born 7 minutes apart. Now, that's very strange, isn't it? When we look back, you could never decipher this at the time, because you can't see the full picture until the puzzle's been completed. But when you look back, you then begin to find certain things that are very odd. I mean, another thing about these aliens is the fact that, isn't it strange that whatever they are, that there's this book I'm reading at the moment called The Terror by Dan Simmons. I think it's the author. I'm not sure that's the author, but it's based on a blockbuster series, based on a team that go to Antarctic and they get stranded there, and there's something killing them off. Basically put, something killing them off. They're stranded. And then you have things like the Diablo, Devil's Mountain. Is this some kind of software? I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is a recent thought I've had, where words are rather like magic, in a very twisted manner, with unconsciously done, or depending on the circumstances at the time, that actually manifest these things. I mean, when they want to summon demons or the spirit world, they draw circles on the floor depicting the anagrams of the Dark Lord or the demonic entities. Certain words could be magical. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but is there some kind of software that we are not yet aware of? Some ethereal thing, a presence around us, interdimensional, that can call these things? And like the Terror was the name of the ship itself, the Terror. Isn't that ironic? And this was based on a true account. And then look what happens. The Titanic, it's named after one of the Titans. The Titans, so it's unsinkable. It sinks. It just makes you think that this is one little element we have to consider of what these things might be or how they're conjured. I mean, as I said, they might well be from outer space. The Roswell ship. I mean, in my digital demon, I go into this and I wonder if that was actually a Trojan horse, because there were so many crashes at the time. Like Sherlock Holmes, I began to think when I was writing this book, there were numerous other crashes at the time. They had to look different, so they didn't raise suspicion with the military. They were different ships and different bodies. Were these engineered or manufactured to just pilot them, or interdimensionally, perhaps, possibly, and to crash so that we might obtain segments or pieces of the technology? We reached a point in time where we could decipher it. Is this some kind of Trojan horse? You see what I mean? So I agree with you, David. It's good to speculate. I love speculation. I love it. Any aspect of it. I'm not denouncing anyone's theories. It's just that we have to be open to most of them.
Yeah, in looking at life, just our existence, we don't even know what we are. We speculate. I truly believe, this is just my opinion, that we are a spiritual being having a physical experience. In other words, this is, in my opinion, this is not our true reality. We come from somewhere else. Why we're here? Is it school? Is it just to have an experience? I don't know why we're in this physical realm, but we are. But I often wondered if, and I know this really sounds crazy, because when I first heard this theory, I kind of laughed and chuckled. I'm like, okay, this is the influence that movies and Hollywood has on people. But now I'm not so sure that maybe we are not in some type of construct matrix, that this reality we think is real is actually, like you mentioned, like a computer's program. Is there a simulation that we manifest? Because it just is so bizarre that when for example, Slender Man, started out on the internet as just a joke, and somebody put that out on Reddit. Now all these people worldwide are claiming to see this thing. Again, is this people looking for attention, or are they really having it? The black-eyed children, which quite frankly scare the hell out of me, But one journalist reports this, and if you type in black-eyed children, there are accounts after accounts after accounts of people who absolutely swear this happened to them. So, but up until the time period in the 80s, we never heard of black-eyed children. They didn't even exist. But I have found, I kind of walk back on this a little bit. I have found some reference in ancient times that refer to children. Their eyes were black, but the way that the writings are, you just assume that they were demonic or ghost. And maybe they are. Yeah. But it was, the phenomenon, and your brother and I talked about the Hat Man. What the hell is this thing? I mean, it has, again, I experienced it directly. It is the greatest fear I've ever known. It's if it happens to me today, I will die, because I know my heart would not be able to take it. but then to find out that all my children also experienced this entity, and it comes in the night. I mean, it's what is it? There is a link, supposedly, that some people, have claimed that this is linked to alien abduction. I don't know. Now, it's interesting that you and your brother have had this experience. Now, when you said 7 minutes apart and then 7 years later, excuse me, shouldn't be doing that, but at 7 minutes and then 7 years apart, there is a theory out there that if you watch these ships in the sky, they're doing maneuvers that defy logic in every way, shape, and form. They should not be able to do any of this. There is a theory that they're not necessarily traveling by propulsion, but they are traveling by manipulating time. So what we see is these incredible, this is impossible. In their reality, they're traveling at normal speeds, but they're able to manipulate time. And it makes me wonder, like at 7 minutes with your brother's, abduction or being taken at birth, or maybe at the birth time period, they already had their eyes on you. So that 7 minutes apart correlates with that time of the abduction. That 7 minutes to them could be 7 years. I don't know. It's bizarre.
Yes, it is. And it's good to reference them, I mean, little things that you might miss. Also, I like that, what you said, David, about I believe we are spiritual beings. We are, in essence, we are. But like you said, what are we in? I mean, it made me laugh when I was at school because, when you're there, the as I call it, the brainwashing academy, you're brainwashed into adhering to the rules and regulations of a preferred narrative and system. But I remembered one class I was in, I think it was physics, and the teacher was talking about the creation of the universe. Mm-hmm. And he stated that to begin with, it was, as we all know, the Big Bang. And I put my hand up and I said, "So what caused the Big Bang?" And he actually said to me, "You don't question. It happened. It just happened. Nothing just happens. Right. There must be cause and effect. There must be cause and effect. What caused that? What are we in? What exactly are we in? Right. What is space? What's holding it? What's binding it all together?" I know it's a dreary old question that people think, "Oh, here we go again," but it's actually fascinating. Are we in a bubble? Are we in? Is it timeless? Is it infinite? Was it always? Was it always, or was it created by a Big Bang? I don't have a problem with it being created by a Big Bang, not a problem. But there must be cause and effect, and what was it in? What caused? You see what I mean? You can go round and round and round. But so when people have the audacity to actually poo-poo the idea of interdimensional possibilities or time travel or aliens, then they really need a slap in the face, because we haven't got a clue. When we look out there, it's quite frightening because we haven't got a clue.
We haven't.
So no. But what you were saying about the software, it's quite possible, yes, that these things can get in here. These things can manifest into the most beautifulest things or the most horrendous things. Right. I mean, certainly.
You mentioned fairies too, and that seems to be, from my understanding of the Fae, and that they can be beautiful and helpful, but they can also be vicious and turn in a heartbeat. And it seems to be that same thing of I don't say manifestation, but maybe the energy you put out, you get in return. Like The Secret, these things. Is there a software, or is there? We call it software, but is there a designed intelligence that picks up on our psyche? Yes,
I like that.
Yeah, it's like just a designed intelligence to do just that. It picks up on our psyche, and then it manifests. And if that is true, then I would be inclined to say that we are here to learn, because something is providing us with the classroom experiment. Something is providing us with these things, either to further expand our mind, our consciousness. I don't know. Again, just a theory, but very interesting.
Yes. In the digital demon, when I go back into, as you were saying about the soul, I actually do reflect over. I had past life regression done to me on a brilliant medium. Her name was Pearl. And this was over 20 years ago, and I documented it. I saw 4 as what we consider to be incarnations, and they weren't pleasant. So when you were saying, David, about being a soul, yes, I believe that. I believe we do come here, we incarnate if we wish to experience, to learn, as you said quite rightly. But these past lives were quite horrendous. I had 4 of them. One, the last one, the 3 were I mean, you had Egypt and 2 of Rome. I believe they were Rome. But the last one was to do with these extraterrestrials, because I do believe which refers to as Kokukun, the Mayan deity, the winged serpent, the feathered serpent. But he wasn't feathered when I saw him. I saw his face. And you see, I didn't even match that up. Didn't know anything about Chichen Itza or El Castillo, the temple of the serpent temple. I knew nothing of this, ignorant of it. It's just I had this past life regression. And this is how ironic life is. And I don't think it's irony. I think there's, as you said yourself, there's pattern to it.
Yes.
There's some kind of pattern or form. You're pushed into that direction. My mother actually just went after when I had the regression to Chichen Itza in Mexico. And she came back with these photographs because I had documented then Kokukun. He looked reptilian to me. He was reptile. He was reptilian. Quite shocking. The face of him, shocking. Intelligence, burning intelligence, but shocking. It's like a dinosaur. You know, the head of him.
Right.
But when my mother came back and showed me these photographs, I recognized where it was. Wow. Now, this was from a past. Yeah, I recognized where it was. I wouldn't have known it was Chichen Itza. But then what was amazing, even more staggering, was the fact that they worshipped the lizard. And you can see the reptile everywhere on these Mayan sculptures and their language. Right. And I thought, oh my God, I think I've seen Kulkukun, the Mayan deity. Now, the directors of antiquity would poo-poo it, and you can understand from their point of view. I mean, of course they're going to defend the fact that we must follow a preferred narrative, that they were built by the people who were clever. But I don't believe that, because I saw his face, and you know, it stuck with me. David, it stuck with me, and it haunted me. So I can quite appreciate when people have these alien encounters, what they see is no different from what I have seen myself personally. You know, it's not going to go. You've been forced down the rabbit hole, and you can't claw out. Once you're in there, my goodness, there's no turning back.
Right. Now, just to back up a little bit for our listeners here, your experience happened 7 years after Philip's, correct?
Yes. No, mine was before. Mine was in 1982.
Okay.
1982.
Okay. Can you, were you in sleeping? Can you kind of, if it's not too painful, walk us through that experience?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was in bed, but I wasn't asleep. I was woken by something, I don't know what it was. And this is not sleep paralysis. I've been down all that road, you know, you go through it all. It just happened. I was in my bed in my pajamas. We lived in Luton then. Up by, ironically, the football grounds. I loved it, Luton, then. It was like, I always referred to it as a concrete jungle. You know, there's all these old derelict factories everywhere and all these nooks and crannies you can go in. And as a kid, and you're just a kid, I was 13, I'm still a kid. But I was taken from my bed and shot right up through the attic.
Wow.
And up into the sky. Now, there was something hanging there. It was dark. It was winter. But I couldn't feel anything. I was just being taken up to this thing, this shape. And to this day, I can't tell you, David, what it was. It was just there. It was this huge, dark thing, darker than the sky, hanging there. Well, I found myself, I'd obviously gone into it and found myself within this wheelchair. Now, this wasn't your standard wheelchair. It was a very modern, extremely ultra-modern looking wheelchair. But I was seated in it. This is where I arrived. I gathered I was in this thing. But I was partially paralyzed. I could move to a degree. I was seated up, but I couldn't turn back. I couldn't turn back. But I could, to a degree, move myself about just a little bit. And I knew there was someone standing behind me. You know, when you know this, we know even now, you know, if someone's behind you, you're going to pick it up. You know, there was someone behind me. But I mean, that wasn't my concern at the moment, because ahead of me, it had a hospital feel to it, a medical feel, this room. and I don't elaborate on anything at all. There was a table, an operating table behind these tall men. These men were very tall, and they were clad from head to toe in a uniform. I couldn't see anything of them. They were completely uniformed.
Was there any insignias on their uniform? Any markings that you can recall?
No. Okay. No. I think they were white. I know people say, well, how can you think? Well, it's a long time ago, but right. I think they were white, not bluish. I think they were white. They wore masks reminiscent to those of the Second World War, gas masks, but they were very modern. Mm-hmm. Their eyes were lenses, they were round, but I can't remember the lower mouthpiece. There was something covering their mouths, but I can't remember. I've illustrated them in the digital demo, but I've elaborated the mouthpiece because, of course, I can't remember what the mouthpiece had on them, but they were covered completely. They looked like tall men. But there was something very odd. I just knew they weren't right. They weren't men at all. They were standing there. Well, three of them standing ahead of me. They didn't say anything. They were just looking at me. But then the one behind me spoke. And when he spoke, I flinched because it came out as English, very acquired, but very authoritative. You're not going to argue with this guy. He said, and I'll never forget the first words he said. We're going to perform an operation on you, Ronald. That's his exact words. Now, I was horrified. I couldn't see him. I tried to turn, but I couldn't see him. And for some strange reason, I knew it was to do with the head. Now, I don't know why this came to mind, but I was horrified. I mean, you're thrust in this situation with these strange doctors, as I refer to them as the doctors. I couldn't move. And I was in their power. I was powerless to stop it. Well, I mean, he when he spoke, he was an authority. He wasn't nasty. They weren't horrible, but they were determined. And I remember begging and pleading with him. I don't want this operation. Now, this will raise a few questions in a minute, David, about this. I pleaded with him. No, it is for your own good. He said, but I promise you, we are not going to harm you. Now, I trusted him. I knew that they were sincere in that. You know, I don't know why, but I just trusted him. And he was very gentle. He then took my left hand in his. Now, I wished I had foresight to actually count the digits on his hand. I didn't. You're thrust into situation. Yeah. And he picked up this utensil from a little rack to the left of me. This utensil, now this utensil I got a good look at. It's very strange. It was like a rod, a simple, like a pen, perhaps the proportions of a pen. And on the end of it, it had a nodule. Now we took this and he pressed it on the top of my left hand. He pressed it just gently. Bang, I was out. Well, the next thing I remembered, I was ejected from this thing. Just ejected. And this is interesting. As I was dropped back to my bed, I could feel this. I didn't feel this going up, but I certainly felt it coming down. I felt this static wash envelope me again and again and again. Every hair on my body felt static. And they placed me back very gently through the attic, right down towards my bed. And I could feel the bump of the mattress. That was horrible, because although I knew it was happening, that even confirmed it more. You know, they put me gently back, laying on my back. And that's when the most horrendous part of it came about, because this I did know was a hologram. I mean, 3D technology in 1980, in the 1980s was crude at best. We all know that. Right. I mean, you only happen to remember Jaws 3 with the 3D glasses. They were horrendous. No disrespect to the film, but the glasses just didn't work, did they?
Yeah,
but this was, the technology they employed was staggering, because across the ceiling they projected electronically, I gather, or some means of photon, or manipulating photons if you want to get smart, a hologram, a huge head of a Cheshire cat, but he wasn't like our version. This thing was horrendous. He was staring down at me. He was grinning. He was electric blue. I knew that he was electric blue, and he was wavering. Now, this, I wondered afterwards, was like the motion of light. It gave the illusion of movement. He wasn't really moving at all. He was staring down at me, and his huge teeth, he was glaring down at me. And then after a few, perhaps a minute or a minute and a half, he went. Now, I worked out everything. afterwards. It took me a long time. He was more horrific, ironically, than the doctors. He was terrifying, this cat. Their goodbye kiss, good night kiss, the nightmare of this hologram, this trick, this mirage they'd used. Well, I never told anyone, only Philip, of course, in 1982. You wouldn't tell anyone. Of course you couldn't. You're ostracized. You can't speak about it.
Right.
As I said, you just, as we know, you couldn't, especially a kid that says the ramblings of an immature mind. But after a long time, I realized what the cat meant. I don't know what the doctors did to me. That's another interesting point that we'll get to in just a minute about that, if you don't mind.
Yes.
It's the cat, why they projected the cat. It took me 30 years to work this out, David, 30 years. It just twigged. I might be wrong, but it's an assumption. The reason why they showed me that damn cat was that if I had gone to see a psychologist, and told them about the doctors and the cat, he'll think, oh, hang on a minute, wait there. You really have been down the rabbit hole. This is Alice in Wonderland. You're getting confused. This is just, you've seen, it's just the Cheshire cat, the grinning cat. You're getting confused. This is just, perhaps they'll pass off the doctors as a fear of medical know-how. And the cat was just, it was just all imagined. And the cat was their insurance. As I found out, he was their insurance, and he worked because that would cleverly denounce anyone from saying, from actually confirming this.
Yeah,
that's right. Now, another thing that was interesting, where the doctor, what they did to me, I can't tell you, David. I have no idea. There's no scars. There's no residue. I didn't feel anything afterwards. I don't know what they did to me. They weren't, as I said, they weren't nasty. They were just forceful. But I've never had an operation in my life ever. I'm medically ignorant of any procedure, but I did have to have an operation last year. The first operation I ever had, I had to go into general, was to do with my prostate because there was a cancer issue. They were looking for cancer. Fortunately, it was clear, I'm happy to say. But when I was on the operating table with our natural doctors, when they were doing this, they put the needles exactly where he placed the nodule. They put the needles to put you out in the top of your left hand. And I remembered when I was lying on that table with our natural doctors, I actually didn't care about the operation. You're fine. You're going to be okay. I'm like that. I'm that kind of person.
Yeah.
I thought, as they put the needles in, I thought, oh my God, that's exactly where he placed the nodule all those years ago. What relevance that has, I cannot say, David, but that's absolutely true. Another question that completely confounded me was the fact that if these things, we call them aliens, can knock people out, they can knock them out. Philip was far, we shared a room, it was a huge room.
Right.
Back in 1980, it was a huge room, all Victorian houses, big old rooms. If they knocked him out, they knocked anyone out. You read of these cases where someone's screaming and then their wife can't hear them.
Right.
Why on earth don't they knock you out as well? To save all the pain and all the disgrace, just knock you out, do what they need to do, put you back, you're not going to know. They don't. So I'm thinking, well, is it because they want you to see them? And if so, why?
Right. Now, we do have cases where they attempt that. Betty and Barney Hill, for example, they didn't immediately recollect everything. There seems to be memory blockers in some of these cases.
Yeah.
I mean, you were able to recall it, though. You were never blocked in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, that's right. I agree with you there, David. Absolutely. A distinct possibility. Absolutely. The cat was, as I said, you're right, because the cat was insurance, wasn't he?
Right.
To just
be laughed at and ridiculed.
Yep. Yeah. That's right. How very clever, but how very nasty.
Yeah.
Now, I've never seen these doctors again. Never, thankfully, I've never seen them again. Although it sounds rather tame, it wasn't at the time. But I've had suggestion that it could be screen memory, because there was something else that happened to Philip and myself when we were 6, long before this, which they obviously did. They obviously did screen us. Now, I don't know what that was. I can just give you a glimpse of it. It's like, all I will say, it's like standing on the edge of a cliff and you're about to just drop. It's like that's the memory. You can't get it. There's paper in front of me. Paper, rolled scrolls of paper. This is the block, but they are the greys. I'm eating my words here because I've said I've never seen them, but they are behind this. It's them. I know it's them. I can't see them properly, but I know they're there. So I appreciate absolutely the enormous cases of abductions and the degradation people have to go through in reporting this, with some being laughed at. But
Right.
I absolutely sympathize and completely understand. And as I said, David, I'm open-minded to all aspects of this. You know, however ridiculous it may be, I'm open-minded. But something happened back then. And I wondered sometimes if it's because we're twins. But there again, I don't think so. If they know how to clone, which they might well do, they wouldn't need the interest of twins, because there are millions of people being taken and all seeing these things, aren't there?
Yes, and one of the things with abductions now, and I can understand, certainly understand in the 80s, you shared this with Philip. Was there any point in time that you discussed this, even as an adult, with your parents or any aunts, uncles, anyone so they're completely unaware of this or were unaware of it?
No, I didn't. But what gave me confidence, is interesting you should say that, was my uncle Bob. He's passed now. He was I think it was a builder. He was a jack of all trades, a lovely man, really down to earth, really down to earth. He didn't believe in any of this. I remembered he telling me one time we went to see him and my aunt, and he sat us down and he said, "I'm going to tell you boys something. I'd never even told him about the doctors then. I'm going to tell you boys something," he said, and this, because of his reputation, his character, absolutely loved Uncle Bob, believed him. I mean, it was a spade to him, you know. He said, I've seen a spaceship. I believe it was him walking the dog, and it came out because they lived near the sea, and it came out of the ocean. It was a cigar-shaped thing. It rose up, and something about all these little lights going into it or coming out. I can't remember, David. Something to do with that. And he saw this huge cigar-shaped ship. In a way, Uncle Bob instilled some confidence after that, because he told us, I don't know who else he told, but it instilled confidence in me, but not enough then to come out with this. But no, in answer to your question, I never told anyone until much later. Only Philip.
It's interesting. It's unfortunate, I guess, but that you weren't able to do that or couldn't, because it seems to me, from everything that I know, and again, I'm not an expert on the subject at all, but it seems like this is a lineage. It goes back for generations, these snatching or abductions, and it would be now. What makes me kind of wonder if more members of your family were not abducted, for the fact of this silver spear, floating over your grandmother, and her more casual, "Oh, it's the fairies," having to look at us, or didn't really take it as fear that she may know something more. You know what I mean? That in, I guess I'm getting tongue tied here, but in her generation and age group and understanding, these type of things would be labeled as fairies instead of something that would be super horrific as something from another planet.
Yes.
So it makes me wonder if your family lineage, this hasn't been happening from generations ago. Again, to what end? Who knows?
Yeah, it would seem so, wouldn't it? Because of my uncle and the thing over my grandma's head. That was haunting. It was like something from Doctor Who. I mean, Philip and I were there with Grandma. It was very haunting. Like something from Doctor Who. I mean, my goodness, you're seeing this piece of hardware the size of a football hanging over her head. To me, I remember the feeling I had, and this is just prior to the doctors. After that, I never saw the doctors anymore. I didn't see the all like that in that fashion. It was like something from Doctor Who, and I referred to it as an electronic eye because it was watching us. It was looking at us. This was a solid piece of hardware. But yes, the family, and even recently, I've realized I can't give names because family are very particular. But one of my relatives, very young relative, has seen a little man walk into his room. So we can't go there. I can't question him. I've tried it, but he's forgotten about it. But yes, so in answer to your question, absolutely, David, you are totally correct.
Now, I guess this is the big question, and before we end this interview, which I could go on forever, I wish we had more time. But looking at everything, where without, because I want our listeners, you have to check out this book if at all possible. I know I'm going to order it. I'm going to read it. This summer, I'm going to have some casual time, so I'm going to be certainly catching up on things. But what do you think this is overall? I mean, again, I know it's speculation. Do you think these are, in the church sense, some of them are demons? And then if we look at it in, again, the religious and church sense, the Nordics or whatever would be viewed as angels? Or do you think there's something even more sinister that we can't comprehend? Or is it just the way it is? I mean, as far as self-construction, I don't know.
I mean, no, I mean, I don't know. But as I said, I do go down the demon aspect, the demonic. We can't rule anything out. We're given a loose history of them. Very, very, not even that, vague picture of the demons. We know of Lucifer's battle with the One for treason. He was cast out from the heavenly abode and sealed into what we call hell. Could hell be a dimension? Could these, we call them demons,
right?
Could they be a reality? He and his army were cast out for treachery. Could this prison, this hell, be a dimension? What they were referring to as an interdimensional prison. What better way of sealing him in? If the One can do anything, he can do that. Were they the Nephilim? This is the thing. Certainly, I do approach that, and you see, we're given a very loose image of them. In fact, most of it's based on fiction, but the church do acknowledge, the Vatican do acknowledge them. They are acknowledged because if they acknowledge God and angels, they certainly acknowledge demons. But getting information about them is like drawing blood out of a stone. So is it because, is this because they know that there were a reality, that there was a war of some kind? We consider it to be ethereal, but it might be very physically real. These might be a reality. Reptilians and the angelic, as you said, a beautiful parallel to what you said about the angels and demons. Yes, quite possible. It could possibly be.
The Nordic race, or I've heard of the Nordic, what they refer to the Nordic aliens. Are there other alien species that you're aware of that seem to have, or at least give the impression that they have our best interest as a species in mind? As far as that are more benign or more friendly encounters, is there, or is the Nordic seem to be the focal or the number one aspect of those type of entities?
I haven't heard any of other species, but yes, certainly you're right, David. The Nordics do seem to be the forerunners of peace and tranquility. But there again, the Greys have told some people that they're concerned over world affairs and all this peace. There's one thing that nags at me about that, and it's quite troubling. And I've had some clever clogs already try and put me in my place with it, but I'm going to argue this, contest it, because they're wrong. It's the fact that when we had the 50s and the 50s and 60s, it was the atomic threat, wasn't it? The atomic, and it is absolutely a threat. It's frightening, it's monstrous. But then you read of these abductees being taken by these aliens, and they're saying something, they're referring to their concerns, of atomic warfare. They're very concerned because it might cause some catastrophic upheaval for humanity or cosmic destruction. Well, I kept thinking something didn't quite add up with that. Either they were lying to the abductees, or it was fabricated, because if they were so concerned on such a monstrous weapon, and they are, the atomic and nuclear weapons are utterly monstrous. You detonate all them will poison the entire Earth for eons to come. Why wouldn't they just simply neutralize them without us knowing? And we scratch our heads and think, oh, right, they don't work. How did that happen? We build more, they do the same. We can't build them. They've won. They don't need to intervene. Their technological clout has been used.
Because if, and obviously, I mean, talking to your brother Philip, he mentioned as well, the Rendlesham Forest, those eyewitnesses, as well as we know another case that happened, but in Rendlesham, from what I understand, we broke treaty with the UK. We actually had active nukes there. Shame on us. But apparently they shut them down. they were able to shut them all down. And then there's another incident I'm not sure if you're aware of, where Russia, they activated all of their nukes. Their nukes became active, and the guidance system targeted them for the USA, and they were panicked. And the Kremlin was on the line. They could not stop it, and then they all shut down at once, as if to send a message.
Yes, it's a bit.
So, but
yeah,
valid point. Why are they not doing this then?
Yes, on a permanent basis. This is what this chap said on the comment. He said, "Well, they have. Well, yes, they might have well to shut some off and switch some on, but I'm referring to as permanently,
right, exactly.
Completely soiling them, dissolving them. Just making them unusable everywhere. They could do it. Of course, they can. That would solve all the problems. We'd be scratching our heads and thinking, who's done it? We can't do it. And of course, if you keep building them and they fail and you have no idea why, you're not going to build anymore. So they've won. This is my point. They haven't done that. Is this an illusion? Is this deception? We don't know. It just, as you can understand, David, it threw me, because I thought, well, if they're so advanced, and then they go on and state that their rule is not to intervene. Well, they're already doing that by being here.
Interesting, though, there is, I guess, as we're talking about this particular aspect or subject of this, there is one other thought that I have. Is again, it complies with the theory that we're here to learn, and that's why they won't, because they're going to give us messages, little hints. It's kind of like the school teacher saying, you want to draw, this is how you draw this, let me see how you can do it. Or you coach somebody along. It could be that there are certain points when they're going to activate nukes to scare the hell out of the Kremlin, because they know that we'll retaliate, and it'll be them per se, and then they shut them down to say, we can control your nukes, and then they, with the Rendlesham, shut them all down, again, to send a message. They may be doing this to send things, but ultimately, if it came down to us destroying ourselves, they may just wash their hands of it and say, well, when you did this, I mean, I don't know.
That would tie up with you're quite right, David, because that would tie up with you. You stated earlier that they are actually broadcasting little tidbits of the military are actually admitting, or the governments are admitting there's something. Is this because they are powerless? They are frightened, and so they're very gently breaking us into a new thought. For most, so it will be frightening for them. We can understand, and I appreciate that we are not alone. Right. That because of this, they're losing, or they never did have any power over them, which I don't believe they did. Even a treaty would have been broken. I mean, goodness knows.
It's strange, though. I have to say, William Haddox talked about that a couple times on our segment. Is there's something. I don't want to say going to happen or going on, but something isn't right. We've had especially the United States, in constant denial. And now all of a suddenly, we see that with the COVID bill, what the hell does releasing UFO information have to do with the COVID bill? But that's again, not to get in politics, but it always irks me when they throw in all this pork on the. But you have a bill that's gave a deadline of June 1st to release information on UFOs. You have the Pentagon now saying, yes, it is unidentified, is unknown, it's not one of ours, and highly unlikely of anything that we know from any other country. And that's all they more or less say. They won't say it's a UFO. They've even changed the terminology now, but they won't say they're aliens from outer space. But they are acknowledging it, which I find strange. The government is to, why are they doing this? The one theory, I'm sure that I buy it, but maybe I'm wrong. There is a theory out there, and it's pretty much all over that. You've probably seen it all over the UFO web pages, is that governments are doing this to set the stage for a faked alien invasion, which would make it easier for it to control the masses. What are your thoughts on that one?
No, I don't believe it's going to be faked. I think it's going to be genuine. I think they have a feeling these things are going to arrive, and it's soon. The real McCoy I think they reckon because they have no power, they have absolutely no control over them. They're fearing that these are increasing, and there's going to be not disclosure from them, but from the aliens themselves. I don't believe in a fake invasion at all. I never did. That's my own personal opinion. I might be wrong, David. And to all your listeners, yep, I'm not going to contest what you believe. This is my own viewpoint. But I believe they are fearing that something is coming, something very big, and they have to just arm or try and prep, as we would say crudely, their sheep. So that they have some perhaps little idea that we are not alone and that there is a power greater than them. Although they don't like it, they're going to have to swallow it. There's a power greater than them that might well be coming or planning disclosure itself, arrival.
Wow. That is a scary thought. I mean, anything that's unknown, it's human nature. We fear what we don't know. But the thought of an actual invasion per se, as far as for conquest, scares the hell out of me because of the technology differences. We could pretty much wrap that one up. But in my opinion,
they might arrive as gods shimmering with good deeds and, promising us the ends of the world. But then might it be like the wonderful Kenneth Johnson's V? Where they're actually, a complete smoke screen, wouldn't it?
Well, Ronald, we are out of time. And again, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the Paranormal Road. It has been so fascinating and so fun talking with you. We definitely have to keep in touch. But before we end, how can our listeners find more about you, your books, to find out more about you, contact you if they want to share any personal stories?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a website. Philip and I are actually building one, but you can get me on Facebook. I'm only on Facebook, but you can see my art as well, because I'm an artist, do digital art.
Incredible art. It was incredible.
Thank you. They can, under Ronald James Kinsella, that's on Facebook. And of course, the book, The Digital Demon, that accounts my involvement with this. It is autobiographical as well, which is very interesting, especially when we were children, based on these things, and also illustrated by myself as well. I had some help from some wonderful people in there. So yes, my friend Neil Geddes Ward, and myself, and Earl Grey Anderson, and Philip Mantle. There's a lot of good people in there. So yeah.
Well, I'll say, the artwork is beautifully done, but it's pretty chilling.
Yes.
You really captivated a demon reptilian type looking entity. Listeners, you can check that out. We'll put the show notes, links in the show notes where you can be directed to where to purchase that book. So again, Ronald, it's been amazing to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. A pleasure.
I really enjoyed talking both to Philip and now his brother, Ronald. Again, I just found them so fascinating. And one you don't get to see as our listeners, but we interview them now by Zoom, our guest. And to actually, it makes so much for a better interview when you can see, again, their facial reactions. And again, you can read what they're saying. It just makes it so much better for an interview. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure you've heard it in his voice. He's just a class act, very, very sincere gentleman, and very interesting. And what happened to them, it is disturbing. I find it very disturbing.
And they're both very interesting and very educated. They know what they're talking about. Their books are awesome. So if you get a chance, definitely get their books.
Yep. And again, they are available on Amazon.com. Just go to the Amazon and check out their books. That's from Philip and Ronald Kinsella. We would like to say thank you once again for joining us each and every week this season on the Paranormal Road. We really look forward to being back next year, season 4, and we will pick up in the fall. But first, we have a whole hell of a lot of camping to do starting tomorrow. Boy, we're just excited, and we will definitely, if we can, if there's a rain out, have a bonus show, maybe 1 or 2 for you, especially if we have something kind of cryptic and creature like in the woods that we can share with you. Hopefully it would be just a Bigfoot, not the dog man.
Yeah, or just anything cool. And like we always say, just because we're taking a little camping break doesn't mean Paranormal Road isn't there for you. So make sure that if you have any encounters, anything you want us to know about, or anything you want to interview or just chit-chat with, send us an email at paranormalroadpodcast@gmail.com.
Again, that's paranormalroadpodcast@gmail.com.